Do you feel like you go through hills and valleys with types of products where something might be really popular, so you try it and you kind of get into it for a while, and then you it just is phased out of your life. You no longer use it. It's not something you enjoy, whatever. That's what we're going to talk about today. We are going to hone in on those beauty products. I'm talking makeup, skincare, etc. that for me personally, I really just don't use anymore, and I don't plan to use them anytime soon. As I always say never. Like, I'm always trying beauty products here on my channel, so there's a chance you're gonna see me buy one of these products in the future and try it. But the general spirit, let's just chat about products that we're not buying anymore, or at least I'm not. Cheers. Today we have cinnamon tea. You guys know I'm a coffee girl, but I was just vlogging about how I'm trying to not drink caffeine as late in the day as I usually do. So I've got decaf cinnamon tea. It is probably my favorite tea. I will link below. Even if you don't like tea, you will like this one. It doesn't taste like tea. This kind of video is so fun. I feel like I've done videos like this in the past, but it's been a very long time. I've seen a couple of my favorite YouTubers recently do this, so it inspired me. All right, let's start with the product that honestly was the first one I thought of, primers. So for me, I really just don't use them anymore because I'm now in a part of my life where I'm using sunscreen. I try to use it daily. And typically with that sunscreen, I'm getting what a primer might give me. So if I were to get a hydrating primer, well, I can find a sunscreen that is hydrating. If I were to get a glowy primer, well, I can find a sunscreen that is glowy. Typically I can find one that does it all. And so for me, I just don't have a lot of use for primer unless it were a day I just wasn't wearing sunscreen, which again, generally I am. So it's just one of those things that I don't need any more layers underneath the makeup I'm gonna be putting on. And so adding in that extra step, I just haven't generally. And so I haven't really found myself buying primers much recently. And I really don't have any plans to, unless it is a primer that's really a sunscreen. You know what I'm saying? I think a lot of us are kind of in that mindset because otherwise you're like, okay, well, what order do I layer this in, you know? And at a certain point, you've got 3 or 4 layers underneath. You haven't even gotten to the makeup step, you know? So anyways, I will say, I think a primer that's pore filling would be one that maybe I would grab for, but I feel like a lot of times those are silicone-y, so you have to make sure you're pairing it with the right kind of foundation. It's a whole thing. So I generally just end up skipping over that unless it's a very special occasion, in which case I want, like, you know, everything to stay put. I have a question for you guys though. If you have I have normal, sometimes dry skin. If you have more oily skin, do you find that you really do need a primer just to make your makeup work? And if so, how are you layering that if you wear sunscreen? Like, how are you layering that in? I'd just be curious. Like, are you putting that over your sunscreen? I'd be curious. But I feel like there are sunscreens that are mattifying for that purpose too. You know what I mean? You can get a mattifying sunscreen that could kind of act as that mattifying primer. Anyway, I'm going around in circles. Okay, sheet masks. This is something that, man, I had such a sheet mask collection for a while. And this was probably at this point, like, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, maybe longer. But I straight up had a basket that was filled with sheet masks. Like, it was such a thing. You remember those days? And they're certainly still around and they're still a thing. But I find myself either not, honestly, just not having the time to do a mask. But if I am, like if it's a day I'm like getting in the bath, I'm doing the whole thing, I usually will just have one mask in a jar that I can apply and use multiple times. And I find that I just enjoy that process more. I will say sheet masks, the one benefit they had was that, you know, you're not digging into a jar or anything, but also that there's not really any cleanup. Whereas with the mask you're putting on, you typically, you know, you got to wash it off, etc. So there's pros and cons to both, but that is just what I've been leaning into. I don't think I own any sheet masks. I do like eye masks. Those I will use from time to time, and I have some. But yeah, man, the heyday of sheet masks, that was a time in my life. You know, that was a time in our lives. But speaking of masks, if you have an absolute favorite mask that's like in a jar, you know what I mean? Not a one-time use mask, but like either in a jar or in a squeezy tube that you swear by, let me know. I'm always looking for ones that are kind of pore clearing, like detoxifying, but I also like the ones that are like radiant and kind of, you know, so let me know. I've been using Tatcha ones and I actually like both of them a lot, but they're really pricey, but they're so good. Like if you need a really good detoxifying masks, I'll link the Tatcha one I love. It is exactly what I want, so I'll probably end up just purchasing it again, but I'm just saying, If you have one that's cheaper than that, let me know. Let's talk about setting spray. I have discovered that I have one or two that I love. It's the Charlotte Tilbury one and the MAC Fix Plus. I don't really need any other ones. And I also barely use those. So I kind of feel like once you found a setting spray you like, that's really all you need. I don't really feel the need to experiment with them. But on top of that, I really couldn't tell you the last time I used one. I feel like I could use one today. I don't know how well you can see it. My skin looks awful today. Like I honestly had to touch up. I've lived a lot of my day today. Like we're farther into the day than normal. And I just feel like everything is just looking really in person. I don't know how well that's coming across. So I feel like today would actually be a good day for setting spray to just kind of get it to melt together a little better. Honestly, it's like I've got concealer and powder and then I just piled more concealer and powder on top just to make things look better than they did. But in person, they look worse, I'll tell you. Anyways, yeah, so I just feel like setting spray, it's one of those things that to have a drawer of setting sprays like back in the day, I don't know that I ever had a drawer of them, but you know what I mean? To have a collection of them, I'm like, I don't even use them. Maybe for a special occasion. And that's something I want to touch on, the idea of your fantasy self. This is something, I did a video long ago about it, but I think I was talking more about like clothing and stuff, but it's this concept just that we keep a lot of things, whether it's makeup and beauty stuff or clothing or whatever, for this idea of our fantasy self. Like, oh, one day if I go on that skiing trip, I want to keep this coat because I would wear that then. Well, is that day going to come? I just feel like with makeup, a lot of times, a lot of these things I'm mentioning were things that maybe I would keep for my fantasy self that had all of the time in the world to get ready and always use a setting spray and blah, 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 blah. When in reality, at least where I'm at right now in my life, I just don't have that kind of time. So on that note, one product I'm really no longer buying, and I haven't for a long time, are colorful eyeshadows and eyeshadow palettes. That's gonna be no surprise, and I feel like a lot of people, you're either really into colorful eyeshadow or you're not. I think there's something to be said about having maybe one colorful thing or palette that you like that from time to time if you're wanting to have fun. But even that, for me, that day really just never comes. I will probably always, I'm trying to think, do I even have anything like colorful in my collection? I don't know. But yeah, that's kind of that fantasy self. Like, yeah, all those times I'll want to play around. I'm like, I don't even have the time to play around. It's sad. You know what I'm saying? So that is one that I just, you know. Okay, shaving cream. I do not buy anymore. I've switched over to shaving oil. I did a few years ago. And so you know what I'm talking, the cream that's like kind of the aerosol, foamy, mousse, if you will. I haven't used that stuff in, I don't know how long. I really like the Tree Hut shaving oil. I feel like it lasts a little bit longer than the foam would for me, but also it's a closer shave. It doesn't gunk up my razor. I use the Billy razor. I've just had such a good experience. They have different scents. As I've said a million times, I wish they would come out with a sensitive skin, unscented one. The scents don't bother my skin, but as someone that does have itchier legs from time to time, please, Tree Hut, please, unscented. But the scents are really nice. I like the coconut lime or something like that. That's my favorite one. I did try the candy cane one over the holidays. It does not really smell like candy canes. It smells like sweet tarts. It smells good, but it's not at all what I was picturing. But I'm finally almost through that one. Anyway, but yeah, I made the switch. I haven't looked back. I just like it more, you know. I don't think it's any more cost effective necessarily. Maybe it lasts you a little longer, but I just like the experience more. The one thing you'll miss out on though is if you like, you know, seeing the lines while you're shaving, you know, where you shaved and where you haven't, you won't have that with this, but I feel like, you know, you can feel and tell where you have. Okay, if you've been watching me long enough, do you remember the days where I used to do my eyeliner? I would do pencil liner to kind of tight line. Then I would do gel, like a pot of cream eyeliner, you know what I'm talking about with the brush? That. Then I would do liquid liner on top. Looking back, it did not budge, I will tell you that. But like generally if I do liquid liner, it doesn't budge. But I'm fascinated that I did all three of those steps almost every single day for so long. I have not owned or looked at a gel liner in years. I honestly forgot they existed. I'm like, oh yeah, like the cream gel eyeliners. Like I totally forgot that was a thing. Do any of you guys still use it? Listen, that stuff is amazing. And if you'd rather apply with a brush, that stuff does not budge. I feel like you've got some decent control with it. I absolutely love it, but I just haven't had the need for it in a long, long time. Man, that makes me want to go out and buy some now. I don't need it. I don't need it. It's just kind of fun to reminisce. Brow pomade is another one. You know, the kind that's like in the pot. I'm over explaining. Most of you guys are like beauty people, so you're into this world. You totally know what I'm talking about. But in case you don't, I haven't used brow pomade. I'm trying to even think. I might own one from ABH or something, but I don't know. I haven't used it in a long time. I will say using brow serums that have filled my brows out more, I just haven't felt that I need them. So I think that's more of it versus back when I felt like I had a lot more to fill in, it filled them in. So I see why people still use them versus not. So at this point, I really just use brow, like tinted brow gels, which is funny because if you'd asked me like 6 or 7 years ago, I couldn't use tinted brow gels because it just didn't fill them in enough. The brow serum I've been using, I've used the Grande brow serum the longest time, and that stuff works. But I was trying to find one that was more peptide based, and I've been using the NYK1, something like that. I got it on Amazon. It's certainly cheaper. And I feel like it's working really, really well. Like I'm getting brow hairs growing, I'm like in places that never grew. I'm like, oh my gosh. So, and it's cheaper. So I'll link that below. I have their lash serum as well. I have not tried that one yet, but that one's next on the docket. So yeah, brow pomade, like filling it in with that. I haven't used in a while, and I'm kind of thankful. I do feel like I never got great at that. And so they always looked a little more unnatural than I was wanting them to look. Especially like I'll look back at pictures of myself and I'm like, oh, girl. Is what it is. Let's talk about high coverage foundations. I really think it's such a personal thing. And someone that might be filming the same video might say that they're done purchasing low coverage foundations or skin tints. So it totally depends on what you like. But for me, I've definitely realized when I catch sight of myself in the mirror through the day and I'm wearing makeup, I definitely like for example, I'm wearing a lot, I feel like today a lot more than usual. And it feels like a lot. When I'll look at myself in the mirror, I'm telling you that the lighting is making it look better than it is. But when I am looking at myself in the mirror, I like the way I look so much better when I'm wearing maybe a medium coverage foundation or a little bit less. Like I'm not always about the like no coverage life. I do like a little bit of coverage, but I've definitely landed on medium being my max. And when I have a full coverage foundation on, I can just tell. And I'm still down for wearing it for a wedding or a special occasion where I really do want it to look perfected. But I always feel like with that, I need to touch up more throughout the day because it's more obvious when something is worn off. Whereas if I've got a light to medium coverage product on, it's not as obvious when I've rubbed my nose and it's worn away because it's not so starkly different than my own skin. It's a dealer's choice, you know? I just need to walk away from purchasing a high coverage foundation. You know what I mean? And I don't think I purchase a ton, but you know, every once in a while, new launch, I'm like, Okay, cotton pads. Not even for environmental reasons, although I think that's a great reason to not use them. That's not my point. Reusable cotton pads are great. Like if you've ever had them, did I get rid of those? I used to have them. I'm trying to think where they are. Maybe they're just in my drawer in the bathroom. But anyway, what I'm talking about is not for like removing nail polish. I'll just use cotton pads for that. So I always have some, but I used to use them for toner. I just use my hands. I think I'd heard a lot of people do that over the years and I'm like, no, that's crazy. Like it's so liquid, but honestly, it's just easy. I just dump the hydrating serum in my hands or the toner, not serum. And it's just, I feel like I'm not wasting any product. I don't need to use something to throw away for very little payoff. You know what I mean? So that's just my reasoning for not really using them. I think we're looking a little different. My battery died, so I had to change it. Now I'm like, I feel like the framing's different. Oh well. Okay. Peach lipsticks look so bad on me. You know, when you consistently try a certain color on yourself and you're like, I just look awful. Peach lipstick is that for me. Like anything that is even slightly peach, I'm like, unless it's like glossy and a little more sheer, then it's like, okay, it can kind of look good. But my lips are naturally a little bit more pigmented. So I think that's a piece of it. If they weren't, it almost blends in better, but I'm also really fair. So there's that piece of it. So it's kind of one of those 2 strikes, you're out kind of things. So yeah, peach lipstick is definitely something that I have no plans to buy anytime soon. Okay, this one I almost didn't mention, but I have not used powder bronzer in a very long time. Like I love a lot of cream products, that's such a thing now, but I definitely feel like other than the L'Oreal True Match Lumi bronzer, which is actually what I used today. Other than that, I just don't really reach for them very often. I actually have better luck at making things look less splotchy with a cream bronzer. And I again, if you'd asked me like 4 or 5 years ago, I never would have believed you, but with the right brush and the right cream bronzer, it looks so much better on my skin and less patchy. And now when I go back to use powder bronzers that I already have, ones that I've loved, I just can't quite get them to give that same almost airbrush look. And so I'm like, eh. So I just, anytime a new powder bronzer launches, I'm like, and I think about it. And you know, the only reason I would pull the trigger on buying another powder bronzer anytime soon is if it were like super velvety and if it were a great, not quite as warm tone and very light. Like if it were the perfect shade for me is my point. That might be the time I do it. But otherwise, I just don't have a lot of interest in them because I'm just having better luck with cream bronzer. So that's the whole video. I feel like that was a faster video than my usual. If you stumbled on this video and you've never seen one of my videos, what's up? My name's Jessica. I hope you're subscribed. I do a lot of makeup videos, drugstore makeup, dupes. I also do high-end stuff. We try stuff on. And then I also do vlogs, just like weeks in my life all the time. So I hope that you'll subscribe and stick around. If you stuck through all the way to this point, comment below with maybe your favorite flower emoji, 3 of your favorite flower emoji, because it is spring, baby. I mean, we're basically there. It's so exciting. I'm thrilled. I got my nails done this morning. I feel like it looks really washed out on here, but I feel like in person it actually looks really nice. But this is like my favorite color under the sun, this kind of like lavender, lilac-y pink, and it just is giving me all the spring feels for sure. Anyway, I love you guys so much. I'll see you in my next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.